So this is one of the most common questions I receive as I work with my students on playing a middle voice. They want to make their lines a little more interesting. Once they master the concept of note choices and are able to play smoothly through a chord chart, they want to create a little more interest in their cello lines. There are plenty of ways to do this, but let's focus on 3 approaches that can add variety while staying in a single hand orientation. The first of which is adding non-chord tones, the second, playing melodic ostinatos, and 3, utilizing hand orientations on adjacent strings, which can give you even more note options without the need for shifting. So the first way we're going to explore is by adding non-chord tones. So when you're playing a middle voice from dot diagrams, as we did in the last video, we're strictly playing notes within each chord, also known as chord tones. Keep this framework in mind as we introduce non-chord tones, thinking of the dot diagrams as your landing points. To make the cello line more engaging, you can play other notes from the hand orientation in between those landing points, creating small moments of improvisation. You may want to add what we call passing tones. If I have a dot diagram, some note choices where I am playing from the low note to the high note, so I'm changing from this note, let's say I'm in Mi orientation, I could connect those notes using the middle note. Or if I'm going backwards. So instead of just playing, I connect it. In essence, that's what a passing tone is. If my note choice stays the same, if I am playing a low note on one chord and then I stay on a low note for the next chord, I could add something that's called a neighbor tone. I could add a note above it, something like that. Or if I'm staying on a high note, I could add a lower neighbor. And then if we are moving by step, if one chord is a low note and then I'm moving to a middle note, or a high note to a middle note, we can add things like appoggiaturas or escape tones, where if I am moving from a low note to a middle note, I could add the upper note, right? Something like that. Or if I am moving from the middle note to the low note, I could add the upper note to it. Something like that. That makes the line a little bit more interesting. And again, you can experiment with the length of these non-chord tones, you can experiment with the rhythm of them, but those are just some simple ideas to get you started. Since there are no strict rules for adding non-chord tones, it's all about experimenting to find what works best in a song. Today we're going to be talking about another way to add interest to your cello lines, what I like to call a melodic ostinato. An ostinato is simply a short repeating musical figure, and this type of melodic device is very, very common in contemporary music. It's different than how a middle voice works because an ostinato operates independently from the chord progression. So the same melodic ostinato, the same notes, the same rhythms, is repeated over and over and over again even as the chords change. So an ostinato can be made of any combination of notes in your hand orientation. And the rhythm of the ostinato could range from simple to complex, and it can include moments of rest as well. Certain ones will work better than others, so you'll need to do some experimenting and find one that works well with a particular section of the song that you're interested in. You may think that repeating the same figure over and over again would become dull and even annoying to the listener. But the amazing thing is that when you repeat the exact same notes and rhythms, every single new chord will color those notes in the ostinato in a different way, and it creates a sense of forward movement in the music, and a beautiful effect ultimately. Starting with simple ostinatos would be my recommendation, both in terms of note choice and rhythms. So things like moving just in quarter notes and doing simple patterns of stepwise motion or walking back and forth between 2 notes. As I was experimenting with ostinatos for Almighty God, I tried a couple different ones. One of them sounded like this. Another sounded like this. Ultimately, the one that I found worked the best started with a rest on the downbeat. And here's what it sounds like in context. So once you add this tool of playing melodic ostinatos to your inventory, you can try switching between playing a middle voice and a melodic ostinato. So keep experimenting, keep listening, and I hope you find one that you enjoy. And Today we're talking about, yet again, another way to add interest to your cello lines, using neighboring hand orientations on adjacent strings. So this is another way you can enhance your playing by utilizing non-chord tones and melodic ostinatos, but expand your note choices to 6 notes by using not only a single hand orientation, but also the neighboring hand orientation on one of the adjacent strings, either a higher string or a lower string. For example, if I'm in the key of G, playing Mi orientation, now Mi is the 3rd note of the scale, so in the key of G, my first finger is on B. Mi orientation in the key of G sounds like this, because it's a half whole finger spacing. So I could easily move to T orientation on the D string, and this does not require a shift, it just requires me to place my fingers in the exact same pattern on the next available string. Mi orientation is here, and T orientation is on the next string above. So that increases my options to 6 notes. If I'm playing a melodic ostinato, I could now play something like this. Or so many combinations now with 6 notes. Other easy combinations would be something like Re orientation on the lower string and La orientation on the higher string, Fa orientation on the lower string, and Do orientation on the higher string. Another one is La orientation on the lower string and Mi orientation on the higher string. And these require no change in finger pattern, only a lateral movement from one string to another. Of course, every hand orientation will have another hand orientation immediately above or below it, but certain ones will require a change in hand spacing or finger patterns as well. So some of them are easier than others to switch between. I've introduced a few of the easiest ones because they don't require a change in hand spacing or finger pattern. So in the following recording, I demonstrate a few possibilities that are introduced by adding adjacent strings. So by incorporating these techniques, you can make your cello lines significantly more expressive, dynamic, and engaging. And if you find this content helpful, remember to like and subscribe. So happy celloing, and I'll see you soon.